Are you considering buying a home in the greater Charleston, South Carolina area? If so, then you should definitely consider new construction, where you can literally get a brand new house and often at a great price with more incentives like closing costs paid by the seller or a lower interest rate compared to the resale market. So new construction is a really great option for many people, but there is a lot that you should know in advance. And I mean like a lot about buying new construction to best prepare yourself for what's ahead. So today we're going to go over 8 things that you should keep in mind when looking at new construction homes, as well as questions that you'll definitely want to make sure to ask the builder's agent. There's so much for consumers to understand when considering or purchasing a new build, and while there are definitely a lot of pros and positive aspects, there are also some cons and some things that you need to look out for. We're going to get into all of that right now, so stick around, grab a cup of coffee and a notebook, and make sure you stay until the end because I have something that I created just for you if you are interested in new construction in the Charleston, South Carolina area. Now let's get into it. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in Charleston, South Carolina, then subscribe below and tap the bell for notifications so you can be the first to know about all things Charleston. My name is Sarah. I'm a realtor here with eXp Realty, and I get calls and emails all the time from people just like you who are looking to make the move to Charleston. So whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, please give me a call, shoot me a text, or send me an email. All the information you need is in the description below, and I'd be thrilled to help you make your smooth move to Charleston. Okay, so first, it's important to start off with defining what new construction is. Now, this might sound a little bit obvious, but it's when you buy a house that's brand new and no one has lived in it before. So you can either buy it way in advance when it's proposed construction, meaning that it has not even started getting built yet. There are not permits. It's literally just an idea. On average, right now, this is taking about a year to complete, more or less. With this option, you can pick all of your finishes in the home, so it can be pretty exciting. Another option with new construction is that you can buy it when it's closer to completion, or maybe it's actually 100% complete and the builder is just ready for it to sell. This is called a spec house when the builder has picked out the different finishes already in advance. So if you don't have time to build from scratch because you need to move ASAP, or you think you would get too overwhelmed with the building process, then this could be a better option for you. We're going to talk about both of these options today because while they are pretty different on one hand, the things you need to know overall are very similar. Also note that new construction is often in a brand new community where all of the homes are new by the same builder, or sometimes there's actually multiple builders within the same community. So these homes are going to have a more cohesive feel where they're part of the same HOA. Maybe they have some amenities like a pool or walking trails. Now there's also, at least in Charleston, in certain areas, there's some one-off new construction homes, meaning a builder bought a piece of land in an area that's thriving, where they know they're going to get a good return on their investment, and they put down a new home just on that one lot, or maybe it was 2 lots, but it's not an entire neighborhood. So for example, here in Charleston, James Island has some of those. I have some right around the corner from where I live that just came on the market. You'll see this also in some of the beach communities like Isle of Palms. They'll sometimes tear down an older house and replace it with something that's brand new. So new construction can actually apply to both of these scenarios. When it's a one-off lot, it's because there's no more room to build in the areas that are really desirable. So the builders take what they can find and they build a new house. Whereas in some other parts of Charleston where there's still a lot of land to be developed, like Johns Island and Somerville, you're going to get more of those entirely new communities, sometimes even master plan communities that are all brand new construction. Another avenue you could go is that you could buy your own piece of land and then pick a builder to build you a custom home. However, this option is usually a little bit more complicated. When you buy raw land, there is so much to consider, like the utilities, the water supply, is it septic or sewer, the zoning, the permitting, and just so much more that is usually too complicated and overwhelming for most people. Plus, it takes a lot longer to go this route. So for the average person, it's not usually your best bet. Okay, now I want to talk about why you need a realtor when you're buying new construction, because you're probably thinking, well, there are agents on site at the model, or if I call the phone number on the website, I can talk to an agent directly. So why on earth do I need another realtor too? Can't I just contact that agent and have them help me? What a lot of people don't know is that it is very important for you to have a realtor on your side when you're buying new construction, because the new home sales agents represent the builder. They don't represent you. If you don't have a realtor, then you don't have representation, meaning that you don't have anyone advocating for your best interest. It's not that new home sales agents are bad. I mean, of course, most of them are really nice people, and they're just doing their job, which is to represent the builder. So they don't actually work for you. If you have your own realtor, that realtor is your advocate. And it doesn't cost you a penny more to have a realtor, nor does it save you any money if you choose not to have a realtor. So why would you not want someone working for you and making the process a lot more smooth? As your realtor, I'm your ally. I keep things moving forward. I can negotiate on your behalf. And the beauty of it is that the builder is actually paying me my commission to help me represent you. So I personally don't ask you as my client to pay me anything above and beyond that. Some agents may do that, but I'm happy to accept the builder's commission, which again, they pay, not you. So why wouldn't you want the extra help and representation? Now that we've got that cleared up, I want to dive into the 8 things that you need to keep in mind while shopping and going under contract for a new construction house. The first thing to know is that the model home is just that, a model. You should know that model homes have every possible upgrade to attract your attention and pull you in. They are beautiful, but these upgrades are not included in the base price of the home. So the base price of the home includes whatever floor plan you pick, plus all of the standard selection when it comes to the design. After that, you pay extra for every single upgrade. These include, but are not limited to, the type of counters you want, the type of floors, if you're going to upgrade your appliances, if you want a fireplace, the type of hardware on your cabinets, the light fixtures, the backsplash, do you want soft close cabinets? And I could go on and on and on. Also, depending on how the builder structures their pricing, there's also often an extra premium for the lot. So if you want a lot that is at the end of the street or on the pond or with the woods behind you instead of another house behind you, a lot of times you're going to have to pay extra money for that lot. So it's really important to note that whatever price you see online for a new construction house is almost never going to be the final price, especially if you're building it from scratch and getting to pick all of those finishes. So you're definitely going to want to ask when you are touring a new home, a model home, or walking through a house that's under construction with the builder's agent. You will want to ask them, what standard features does this home include? Another thing you should know is that the builders don't put all of their inventory online. So if you're scrolling Zillow or Redfin and you see a particular floor plan or a particular price online, and then we call the builder, they may not have that exact house. They possibly already sold the house that was listed, or that's the model home that they're just using to have online. but that particular house might not be the one that's exactly available. Their inventory is constantly changing, sometimes by the hour in a hot market. So when we call or go to visit a community, just know that there's likely going to be some different options than whatever you saw online. But on the flip side, that can be good because you might get to the community and realize that there's something that you like even better, or that there's a different floor plan. So it's just always good to ask about all your different options. The next thing you need to keep in mind is around the financing and incentives that the builders offer. So builders often offer incentives such as giving you a certain dollar amount, maybe $10,000 or $20,000 to apply to your design upgrades if you are getting the opportunity to pick out your finishes. Or sometimes they will give you a discount on the purchase price. Sometimes they have lower interest rates than what you could get going through a conventional mortgage broker. Sometimes they will even give you a certain dollar amount towards your closing costs. These are all great and part of what makes new construction so appealing. Builders have more flexibility and margin, especially the big national builders. So they often have these incentives to make it super appealing for you and to get you in the door to show you what they have to offer. So a lot of times it really is a better deal than buying a resale home, because individual homeowners who are just they bought their home 5 or 10 years ago and now they're selling it, they just don't have those same margins. They just can't compete with those types of discounts typically. Just as a little side note here, if you are reselling a home and have a lot of new construction homes nearby as your competition, it might be a little bit more difficult for you to sell or to compete, because if the price point is kind of similar, why would someone buy a home that's 5 years old when they could just buy something down the street for the same price or possibly even a better price? So I've seen people who have had to drop their price or offer some kind of seller paid closing costs as an example in order to compete with those new construction homes. Now, on the flip side, if you did buy your home early enough when the community was first starting, it's possible that you got a really good price on it, because the more homes that get sold in the community, usually the price tends to go up with every few homes that get sold. You possibly have some built-in equity in your home just by the mere fact that the builder is raising the prices. And maybe you have some overall market appreciation as well. So it is possible that you could make money on your home depending on when you sell it. It really just depends, but I just wanted to mention that as something to consider. Now, going back to this whole conversation about the incentives, in order to get these, you really need to know that in order to receive the incentive, you must use the builder's lender for your mortgage. If you are already pre-approved and have a lender that you love working with, it's possible that they might not be able to financially compete on the loan when compared to what the builder's lender is able to give you. However, if you love your loan officer, you should definitely ask them and just see what they can do, because you never know. Maybe they can offer you the same incentive that the builder is offering. Another tip is that sometimes the builder has flexibility in their incentives, so it can't hurt to ask for what you want or need. For example, let's say they're offering $20,000 towards design upgrades, but you just really want your closing costs covered instead, because you're just okay with the standard features, and for you it's more about how much cash that you have available right now. So just let them know that and see what they can make happen. You can also try to negotiate if, let's say, the builder down the street is offering $8,000 in closing costs, but the builder that has the house you really love is only offering $4,000 in closing costs. You could possibly try to bring that up and just see if they would be willing to match the competition at the $8,000. So again, because these builders have more margin in their numbers, a lot of times they have more flexibility and they just really want to make the deal work. So sometimes there is some wiggle room in how it's actually structured, just to make the most sense for your specific financial needs. The third thing to keep in mind is that builders almost always use their own contracts, not the standard South Carolina state contract. So we can always ask for a copy ahead of time if you want to get familiar with it, if you want to have your attorney review it in advance, if you want to ask any questions or get advice. I definitely recommend that. These contracts are typically lots and lots of pages and addendums. I have one under contract right now, and just the main contract alone was like 48 pages plus so many addendums I can't even count, and those are all multi-pages as well. So they tend to just have a lot of additional paperwork, and they're usually custom to each builder. Definitely make sure you read through these. I know it can be just a lot to take in, but it's super important. They'll have very specific terms in there. So for example, the one that I'm under contract with right now, it says that your contract is only contingent on financing for 14 days after contract ratification. So that means that if your financing was to fall through after the 14-day window, that really doesn't matter to them. You're still obligated to buy the house because it's in the contract. However, on a resale contract, the ones that we use in South Carolina anyway, is that financing can go up to the 11th hour, where somebody literally the day of closing might not get approved for their financing because of some kind of credit or job change. And you always have that as an out in the contract as the buyer. So it's very different in this particular contract. The final price is also subject to change usually, so just keep that in mind, that once the builder knows their cost of materials, once you pick out all of your upgrades, especially this is relevant if you are going the route of getting to pick out your finishes, just know that if you're quoted a certain price, or if you go under contract for a certain price, the price could vary and go up even higher, as well as the interest rate, because the interest rates usually can't get locked in until 30 days or sometimes 60 days before closing. So just know that in a volatile interest rate market like we're in right now, that could really either be in your favor or really be detrimental to your monthly payment. There's also other things to look for in the contract. For example, there might be a clause that says the structural changes are only allowed within 7 days after the contract. And after that, if you do want to make the changes, you'd have to get them approved by corporate, and there'd be a $1,000 change fee per request, something like that. So structural changes could be anything like, well, of course, the floor plan. Let's say the landing at the top of the steps. Do you want that to be a closet? Do you want that to be an extra bedroom? Do you want that to just be a landing? Do you want a banister going up the stairs, or do you want the wall? Do you want the patio slab in the back, or do you want a covered porch or a screen porch? There's all of these things that fall under the umbrella of structural. So those are usually the first things that you'll pick out, and just know that they're usually pretty set in stone unless you're going to pay a fee later on. Moving on to number 4, another thing that you need to keep in mind is regarding your attorney. South Carolina here, we're an attorney state, meaning that you always close on your home with an attorney. I know in some other states, there are title companies that you'll go to do your closing, but here it's always at an attorney's office. So a lot of times, as I was mentioning earlier when I talked about the incentives and how you have to use the builder's mortgage lender in order to get the incentives that they're offering, a lot of times they'll also require you to use their attorney as well. So this can be a little bit sticky, because I would always recommend that the seller and the buyer have different attorneys, because if something comes up, then the attorney can't really represent either side fully. If they're representing both of you, they kind of just become this neutral third party, and you'd have to go hire another attorney anyway. So I would always advise you to pick a different attorney than the builder, but if you have to do it in order to get the incentive, that is totally your choice. Just make sure you know going into it all of the risk that can pose. The 5th thing to know is that your earnest money is very different in new construction than in the standard state contract for resale homes. How it works is in new construction, it's a deposit, and then there's no backing out of the contract without losing that deposit. So there's no period of time for due diligence, typically anyway, like there is in a resale home contract. If this is all kind of gibberish to you, basically what this means is that in a non-new construction home, so the normal, go on the MLS, buy that home, in that type of contract, we have this period of time called due diligence that's negotiated between the buyer and seller during the when you're negotiating the contract before it gets ratified. So let's just say you have 7 days or maybe 14 days of due diligence. That is a time where you do your inspections, you look at everything that's important to you, like your cost of insurance, your HOA fees, the school zones, anything that matters to you. And if you're unhappy with anything during that window of time, you can cancel, and all you have to do is pay a termination fee, which is also negotiated as part of the contract. Separate to that, we have earnest money, which is a good faith deposit. So that is sometimes paid up front with the contract. Sometimes it's not paid till the due diligence window, either during that window or at the end. Again, this is all negotiated in the contract, but you have that earnest money that you put down as a good faith deposit. It's applied to your closing costs and down payment at closing. Now, in new construction, when they say earnest money, that is your deposit that you do not get back if you are to cancel. I have seen a huge variation when it comes to what builders are charging for these deposits. I've seen it as low as $500, but a lot of times it's more like 3 to 5%. So let's say $15,000 on a $370,000 home. It'll be even more for higher priced homes. So just keep that in mind as well. The sixth thing that you really need to know when it comes to new construction is regarding home inspections. Now, a lot of times the new construction agent will really try to tell you that you don't need a third-party home inspection because they have a team that inspects the home, which is true. However, I highly recommend that you also pay for your own home inspection, as they often catch things that the builder doesn't. The nice thing about getting a home inspection is that the builder must make these repairs. This is not a negotiated thing. If something's wrong, they have to fix it. As you may know, it's not usually like that when you're buying a house, but this is one of the reasons that new construction is so great. Now, the other reason I recommend doing your own inspection is because you would be surprised about what inspectors have found sometimes when it comes to new builds. It could be anything like the AC line isn't hooked up, or there's a gas leak in the fireplace, or there are nail holes in a roof that could cause leaks. There's just a myriad of things that the inspector could find. So there's actually 2 types of inspections that can be done. The first is a pre-drywall inspection. So you might not have the opportunity to do this if you are buying a home that's further along in the process. But if you do have this opportunity, I also highly recommend this inspection, because at the pre-drywall inspection, they make sure that everything is up to code. They look at the framing, the wiring, the plumbing, the sheathing, the house wrap, the flashing, basically everything that will be covered by sheetrock and siding later on. This report also often includes pictures that you can reference back to them in the event that you need to know where something is after everything is covered up. I recently asked one of the home inspectors that I use how much he charges for this, and he quoted me $329. So that's definitely money well spent. The second inspection that I recommend is what I already mentioned. It's more of your standard home inspection, and that would not be done until the house is nearly complete. So this is going to be very similar to what you're used to with a pre-owned home inspection. The prices on these really vary depending on the square footage. It could be anywhere from about $500 to $800, possibly even more. It really just depends on your inspector. Another thing that happens during the contract phase of a pre-owned home is something called a CL100. This is an inspection that looks at any potential pest damage like termites. It also looks at moisture levels to see if anything is too high. So when you're buying new construction, you don't have to worry about this because the house was literally just built. There hasn't been time for the bugs to invade it or for the moisture to build up. So instead, the builders are required to do a soil treatment for termites before closing. Typically, they actually saturate the soil before the build ever starts, and that's how they treat it versus the traps that you sometimes see that you would have to maintain. Again, you're going to have to ask your builder and see what kind of termite or pest treatment that they include. They also sometimes provide a termite bond, which, if you're not familiar, is basically like insurance for termites. So if you have a termite bond, then that means if there was to be any damage, that your pest control company would come out and cover that damage and make it right. Again, this is one of the questions that you would need to ask the builder to see if a termite bond comes with the home once it conveys. The seventh thing to keep in mind with new construction is around the upgrades. Now, we've already touched on some of this, and if you're buying a spec home where the finishes are already selected, then this isn't going to apply to you. And really, the majority of builders since COVID haven't been allowing people to pick their finishes as often as they used to. It really just helped them streamline the process and keep expenses down during COVID, where the prices of all the materials were skyrocketing and there was just so much demand that they couldn't really keep up with it. So instead of allowing people to pick out their finishes, they just decided to choose everything for them, and it made their process a lot easier. They liked it so much that a lot of the builders have just continued to do it. So it really just depends on your market and your particular builder if you even have the option to pick out your upgrades. But if you do and you're buying early enough to get to go to the design center, then there's definitely some things you need to keep in mind. So typically you'll go under contract, and then within the next couple of weeks, they're going to ask you to go to the design center where you meet with a consultant, and I have all kinds of samples in the store to show you, all of your options for flooring and countertops and backsplash and everything under the sun. So I've actually been to one of these appointments before, and while they're super fun, they can also be extremely overwhelming because you're trying to pick everything for your house within this few-hour window. So the greatest advice I could give you is to be super prepared in advance for what you're willing to spend. Because as I mentioned earlier, every single choice usually adds more money to your bottom line, and it can add up super fast. Now, usually they'll give you something online that you can look through, like a lookbook that shows you a lot of the different options, so you can start to get a feel for what your choices are going to be and what you like, what you don't like. But I would definitely recommend having a budget in mind, and especially if you are going in with a significant other or somebody else that's on the mortgage with you, you really need to have the conversation in advance for how much is your maximum for what you're willing to spend, because otherwise in the moment it's just going to get really hairy and you just don't want to go down that route. Another word of advice is just to be mindful and not going too overboard in the money that you are spending at the upgrades. A tip I have is that you could ask the design consultant or the on-site agent for your new build what the average person spends in upgrades, because you don't really want to go too far over that. Otherwise, you might not get the value back when you're trying to sell the home down the road. So for example, if the neighborhood normally people spend $60,000 worth of upgrades per house, and you want to spend $100,000 worth of upgrades in your house, you might not get that extra $40,000 back when you go to sell it, because it can be hard for the appraisers to find the value in certain things. The same word of caution goes for your lot premium. You may not get all of your money back when you go to sell your house if you pick a super expensive lot. Sometimes the lots add a lot of value to the home, and sometimes not so much. It really just depends. If you want more upgrades than you can afford or want to spend, then my advice is to spend money on the structural upgrades that are a lot harder to add later, like, for example, a fireplace or the wood stairs, the tread that matches the rest of your flooring instead of the carpet that is likely going to come with the basic pricing. Maybe it's the stair railing instead of the solid wall. There are so many things that sure you can change later, but they're going to be just expensive and a pain in the butt, versus some other things that are way easier to change on your own, like light fixtures or adding a backsplash, swapping out the appliances, creating an accent wall. All of those things are a lot easier to do later, and you can even get a good deal on some of the hardware and things for these more design features. So just try to sort out in your mind what you think you'd be able to do in the future versus what's going to make the most sense to do upfront. You also usually only have 7 days after your design appointment to make any changes. Sometimes it's 0 days. Again, you're going to need to ask this very important question up front. So make sure you're sure on your selections. If you do need to make a change later on, again, a lot of times there's a fee, maybe it's $500 and it has to be approved by the builder. So there's just not a guarantee that you're going to be able to make changes later. Now, the last thing to keep in mind if you are going the direction of building a new house is the timeline and the different steps involved. So again, if you're buying something that's further along or maybe already complete, this isn't all going to apply to you. But if you are building from the beginning and picking out your finishes, there's often multiple meetings that happen in between the time of contract and the time that you get to move in. Usually there's in addition to the design meeting that I just mentioned, there's also a pre-construction meeting after they get the permitting. Then there's a pre-drywall meeting, which is you go out to the house when it's in the framing stage. Then there's a new home orientation. Sometimes it's called a blue tape walkthrough, where the house is almost ready to go. You go in, you look at any areas that might need attention. Maybe there's somewhere where the paint got scuffed or something's not installed correctly, and the builder will fix all of these things before you close and move in the home. There's usually some type of warranty or some other plan in place for what happens after you move in. So sometimes you'll have 30 days or sometimes it's a year to notice anything else after you move in that isn't quite right. Maybe a door isn't hung correctly. There's so many small things that could be a little bit awry that you will get to request the builder to fix, but there is some kind of timeline on how long you have to request those changes. Now, we've gone over so much in this video, and I just want to wrap up with some additional questions that you should ask the new home sales agent. I've already mentioned a lot of these throughout the tips that I've given you, but a few things we didn't cover are just generally asking questions about the builder. If it's a builder you're not familiar with, maybe they're smaller scale, just ask them some general questions like, how many homes have you built this year? Or how long have you been in business? Are you licensed? Are you insured? How do you compare yourself to other builders? What's the most important benefit of the homes you build versus your competition? You may want to also ask, what are the major energy saver features that the home includes? Are there any green upgrades that they're including? For example, a total foam encapsulation for the insulation. There's a lot of things builders are doing these days to make homes more environmentally friendly, and a lot of those things could even save you money on your utilities. So be sure to ask and see what they're offering. As I mentioned a moment ago, but I want to reiterate here, definitely ask about the type of warranties that they offer. You can ask to get a copy of it to see all that's included. A lot of times they'll have a 1-year, a 5-year, and a 10-year, and they have different things that are included in each of those structured warranties. And then, of course, you'll want to ask about the community amenities. Is there a pool? Are there walking trails? Is there a dog park? What does the HOA cover? How much is the HOA per month? Does the community have an architectural review board? So if you wanted to change the color of your house in the future, is that something you'd be able to do, or would you have to go through an approval process? You can always ask for a copy of these documents in advance. Whew, that was a lot, but I hope that you found this super helpful and feel a lot more prepared now if you're wanting to go in the direction of a new construction home. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I have a thank you gift for sticking around till the end, where you can get an up-to-the-minute list of all of the new construction homes in the Charleston area. So if you go to the link below, you'll see where you can sign up for that. It will take you 10 seconds. You literally just put in your email and then you'll be redirected to the page where all of the listings are there. It's throughout Charleston, so all the suburbs, all the way out to Somerville and Moncks Corner, as well as closer into Charleston, so you can really just compare and contrast. They start at about $278,000 for townhouses and go up to $14 million for a new build on Sullivan's Island. So it's a huge range of houses at the moment, but I think it'll be fun for you to look at and just start to see what speaks to you. Again, I would love to meet you and help your home journey here, so feel free to send me an email, give me a call, text, or just go ahead and schedule a Zoom in the link below. And I look forward to hopefully getting to support your home buying journey here in Charleston. Until next time, I hope to see you around Charleston and have a great day.